Lab for Livestock Systems at the University of Florida for welcoming remarks and also to highlight the objectives of today's webinar for us. Are you on the call?
Yes,
Ola?
I am.
Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Guy. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. And I want to acknowledge His Excellency, Minister Fikru Regasa. I'm not sure if he's joined us, but I believe he will be. If he hasn't joined us, we're very honored to have him participate in this special webinar. And I'm honored to give a few opening remarks about the objective on behalf of the director of the Feed the Future Innovation Lab for Small-Scale Irrigation, and that's Nicole Lefort, who is the director at Texas A&M University. And this morning or this afternoon, the focus of our webinar is irrigated fodder in Ethiopia, and to look at the suitability and the potential. And we all know that the Livestock Master Plan, the Agricultural and Growth Transformation Plan, and even when we started as the Livestock Systems Innovation Lab and visited with many of you in Ethiopia, feed was described as the main constraint to livestock production. And so this is a very timely webinar because of the potential of irrigated fodder to help to meet the great demand for feed in Ethiopia. Now, in addition to our hosts, the irrigation lab for this innovation lab for small-scale irrigation, we have been working extensively with many partners at Texas A&M, EIR, Hawassa University, and ILRI. And ILRI has also done a lot of work with on their own and also with the small-scale irrigation lab on the whole subject of fodder, looking at improved fodder varieties for enhancing the productivity of livestock. So today we have an opportunity to listen to some very interesting research from the small-scale irrigation lab, as well as the livestock systems irrigation lab and ILRI. And so our objectives today are to share these important results and so that these can help us to inform decisions. We can think about scaling solutions. We can think about dialogue to shape further research and investment. So I'm really hoping for the full participation of everybody in this webinar today. It's going to be very important that we promote research in order to inform policy and also show the way forward, provide a roadmap for future funding, for future support in this area, so we can identify priorities, dialogue, get input for additional research, but also additional funding support, not just in Ethiopia, but throughout East and West Africa. So I really look forward to an exciting and compelling presentations by each of our presenters and to a really lively discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Bola. Now I'm going to move to invite Dr. Irgalem Gebremeskel, Livestock Program Management Specialist and Technical Advisor at the USAID, to give us opening remark. Irgalem, are you online? Hello, Irgalem? I saw her early on. Oh yeah, I can see you. Thank you. Over to you now.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. We can hear you. Yes. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you very much, Sahai. Good morning and good afternoon, depending where you are. I am Irgalem, Livestock Programs Manager from USAID. I am also serve as a point of contact for centrally funded innovation labs, including Livestock System Innovation Lab and Small Scale Irrigation Lab. And it is an honor for me to be here representing USAID. And I would like also to join Bola for welcoming you all participants to this webinar. And thank you very much for your valuable presence. So looking at the summary of the study, this work shows a great effort of coordination and complementarity among various USAID-funded, US government-funded programs, and their collaboration with other research and development partners and relevant government institutes, mainly EARR. This approach, I believe, that it is a recommendable approach to achieve a common goal of any project. So this complementarity and coordination is highly encouraged by USAID and other partners. The Innovation Lab for Small-Scale Irrigation and also the Livestock System, they are centrally funded programs, and they are part of Feed the Future, the US government Feed the Future initiatives. So though they are funded centrally, USAID Ethiopia mission has really to make sure before they got approval for their activity and launching their implementation in Ethiopia, USAID mission has to verify that they are in line with that of the mission, the Ethiopian mission, which is, of course, that supports the development agenda of the government of Ethiopia. So most of the activities, though funded centrally, we are also as USAID make sure that they are in line with the government and the USAID Ethiopia activities. Coming to the webinar today, which is focusing on fodder and potential for irrigation, as Ebola has already mentioned, in most of developing countries like Ethiopia, feed shortage and poor quality are the major constraints for livestock production. We also know that despite having Africa's largest livestock population, Ethiopia haven't realized the full benefits from the sector due to very low animal productivity, which is, of course, is attributed to many factors, but the foremost being poor quality and inadequate feed resource. Hence, as this study has done, identifying suitable sites for supplementary fodders production and using irrigation practices, I'm sure that they could definitely attract options for enhancing feed resource base and nutrition base for livestock, but also at the same time, it can improve productivity of the livestock. It could be also environmentally sustainable. It also improves household income and also human nutrition. So I hope the result of this study will provide a valuable insight for decision makers, particularly the livestock sector decision makers, but also for practitioners and the private sector. Actually, those who are interested to invest, who are within the livestock sector, who can also scaling up fodder production in Ethiopia. This could be a very good opportunity for the private sector. So I think with this remark, I would like to stop here actually, and I look forward to an open and constructive discussion and wish you all most successful webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Yergelim. So you laid the setting for us. So we are going to move now to get presentation on results of suitability modeling. I would kindly invite Dr. Yuhun Dile from Texas A&M to give us his presentation on biophysical suitability of irrigated fodder in Ethiopia. Over to you, Yuhun.
Thank you, Sahai. So I share the screen, and you will start the presentation from the beginning part of the presentation.
Okay, thank you. And participants, please use chat box for comments and any question for this presentation. Thank you. Over to you, Abdu.
Thank you, Sahai. Hi, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity to present this study with my colleagues, the result of the irrigation fodder suitability assessment and potential for scaling. Next slide. As you know, agriculture is the most important economic sector in Ethiopia, and livestock is an integral part contributing a significant proportion of the agriculture domestic product. The country has the largest livestock population, but productivity is suboptimal due to seasonality of feed quality and quantity. And given the livestock sector significant stake in smallholder livelihood, improving fodder production system will contribute to poverty reduction. Therefore, the Innovation Lab for Small-Scale Irrigation has been studying the potential of small-scale irrigation to improve fodder production in Ethiopia. In this presentation with my colleague, we will present our findings on irrigated fodder suitability assessment, the potential for scaling, and the economic and nutrition outcome of irrigated fodder. And the potential fodder crops were selected in collaboration with our stakeholders in Ethiopia, which includes Napier, alfalfa, oats, vetch, and desho. Next. This slide presents the different data sets used and the methodology framework developed to assess the irrigated fodder suitability assessment. As you can see, we have considered multiple biophysical and socio-economic factors, which include soil, rainfall, and potential evaporation, and access to road, livestock population, and also the landscape slope was part of it. And you can see the source of data and also spatial resolution here. And the flowchart shows the methodology developed to identify the potential area for irrigated fodder production and to assess the groundwater irrigation potential. And the top line that you see is the factors that we considered on, and these all factors, like some of them, this livestock population has been mapped across the country, and we have estimated the tropical livestock unit, which aggregates the different livestock categories to standard relative feed requirement. And we have considered also soil, and all these different factors were weighted and also reclassified to multiple suitability groups and overlaid to identify the potential area for respective fodder crops. And finally, the suitable area was overlaid on groundwater depths and potential borehole yield to estimate the irrigation potential of the groundwater. And this slide shows all these different factors that we mapped as I previously discussed. This is the rainfall map. We have used more than 500 rainfall stations to estimate the rainfall across the country, and this is the potential evaporation, and this is the rainfall deficit, which is rainfall minus evaporation, and it shows the higher rainfall in the western part of the country. This is the major road network and also distance to these paved roads. This is the land use data that we used to identify the potential area, and this is the slope map across the country, and this is the soil texture. As you know, soil texture is one of the important factors affecting the water availability, and also we have considered soil depths because some of these crops are affected by the soil depths, and soil pH is very important. Some fodder crops have high tolerance for acidic soil, and this is the temperature data. Then all these factors, next slide. And all these factors were reclassified into different levels of suitability based on FAO framework, and also the weighting of these factors was done by pairwise comparison. Then after that, after overlaying all these weighted and reclassified factors, we come up with the most suitable area for those respective fodder crops. And this is the result of the suitability analysis. As you can see, this is the suitable area for Napier production, and this one is alfalfa. So we have done the suitability analysis for 5 of these major crops. As you can see, the suitability value, for example, for Napier, it ranges from 48 up to 94. The higher the number indicates the higher the suitability, and as you can see, the western part of the country is highly suitable for Napier production, while the eastern part of the country is highly suitable for alfalfa production. And also on top of that, we on the last graph indicates the suitable area at different threshold number. As you can see, this is the threshold number, this is the suitability. So at 80% suitability, Napier has Desho has 350,000 kilometers square suitable area. And as you can see, at different threshold numbers, the Desho suitable area is higher and followed by Veg. And from this analysis, we found out that nearly 20% of the land in Ethiopia is highly suitable for fodder production. And the next step, what we did was to disaggregate this suitable area to these major 12 river basins in Ethiopia. These are the 12 river basins in Ethiopia, and the figure that you see on the right. So the second largest basin, which is Abai, has the highest suitable area for Napier and oats production, while the third largest river basin, the Nile Dawa, in the southern part of Ethiopia, has highest suitable area for alfalfa, veg, and desho. And in general, we found out that Ethiopia has the largest suitable area for desho production, which is close to 31%, followed by veg 23% and Napier 20%. And the other thing that we did is, after identifying the suitable area, we have tried to see the irrigation potential of the groundwater. And we used the groundwater data from British Geological Survey to evaluate the groundwater potential. And based on our assessment, we found out that this suitable area has access to shallow groundwater, and that could be tapped using simple water lifting technologies. So as you can see in the table, the depth to groundwater on average is less than 30 meters, and we have a higher borehole potential yield, close to 5 liters per second, which could be used to irrigate a significant proportion of those suitable areas. And with that, I will invite Dr. Delay to continue the scaling potential of those different fodder crops.
Okay, thank you, Abiyu. Thank you, everybody, attending this webinar. So our work in general is integrated, but our work related to the SWOT, Apex, and PharmSim model is, in fact, more integrated. So this research applied 3 models, 2 biophysical models, SWOT and Apex, and another socioeconomic model, PharmSim. So these 3 models were applied in an integrated fashion in our research. So SWOT is a watershed or basin scale model, which is used to assess available water resources or impacts of interventions like small scale irrigation on the environment. And Apex is a field scale model, and it is used for assessing crop productivity. And PharmSim is a model which helps to assess the impacts of interventions on socioeconomic, like income and nutrition. And these 3 models were applied in an integrated fashion. They share inputs and also outputs, and they give the respective perspectives on a particular intervention. So I will be talking more on the biophysical aspect, mainly related to SWOT modeling, but the biophysical theory and modeling approach works for the Apex model as well. So as you can see, this is just a schematic description of the biophysical modeling. So in this biophysical models, we use biophysical data like climate data, land use, soil data, and we also use biophysical equations to estimate different variables. So in this case, we used these models to estimate water balance, water quality like soil erosion, nutrient leakage in the watersheds, and also crop production, as well as these models estimate the impacts of land use change, land management change, climate change on water balance, water quality, and crop production. So as this webinar is about suitability and scaling, we are focusing now on modeling the entire Ethiopia. So what we did in our SWOT modeling. SWOT means Soil and Water Assessment Tool. So what we did was we divided the country into grids, about 14,000 grids, and each grid has about 10-kilometer resolution. And we used very detailed data. For example, we used about 240 rainfall stations, about 140 temperature stations, and we used very fine resolution land use data and also soil data. And to calibrate the crop parameters, we use field collected data in the ILSI research, and also we use data from the Ethiopian Institute of Agricultural Research, FAO, and partner institutions such as IMI, ILRI, and IFRI. And after developing the model, we need to make sure that the model is performing right. So we calibrated and validated the model, and we also evaluated the model. And as you can see in this statistics, the model was providing satisfactory performance in capturing biophysical situations on different mesoscale watersheds in Ethiopia. So I will not go into the details on the numbers. So after calibrating and validating the model, the first step was estimating the water resources. We need to make sure that if sufficient available water exists to support the irrigation. So here you see blue-green water. So I may need to define that. Blue water is the water in the rivers, in the streams, in the lakes, and also in the groundwater aquifer. And green water is the invisible water that we don't see. Like green water storage is the water that is stored within the soil moisture, and green water flow is actual evapotranspiration. The actual evapotranspiration doesn't look a resource, but it is, because if we reduce evapotranspiration, we can turn that evapotranspiration into a resource, and we can use it for irrigation. So in this figure, you see the blue water. So there is a high variability in blue water. The eastern part of the country, like Ogaden, Wabi-Shebele Basin, has a very low water. The red means low. And as we go into the upper Blue Nile Basin, in the Baro Basin, the water resource is high. So the blue water can reach up to 1,600, like in the Ethiopian highlands. And like more than 25% of the country has a blue water of more than 500 millimeters. It's like runoff. It is river flow, which is a very high resource. And when we look at the green water storage, the water that is stored within the soil, and that is also a very high resource, and it is not that variable like the blue water. The variability is less, and this resource ranges up to 250 millimeters. Like the Baro Basin has the highest green water storage. And I'm talking about annual, average annual over 30-year time period. And 55% of the country has a green water storage of more than 125 millimeters. Imagine this is the water stored within the soil. That's a very high resource. And the green water flow, which is evapotranspiring, is also high. It can reach up to 250 millimeters, and more than 57% of the country has a green water flow of 500 millimeters. So Ethiopia in general has a high amount of water resources which could be used for irrigation. So once we assess the water resources in the country, we were estimating the potential to produce fodder. So in this case, we are looking the potential for veg and oats. So this map is showing for veg production. So we produce the veg during the dry season. So during the rainy season, the farmers are using the land for cereal production. And during the dry season, using irrigation, they produce veg in this case. So the veg production can reach up to 14 tons per hectare. And like 87% of the rain-fed land can produce more than 7.5 tons per hectare. So here the white area you see is either a forest land, a grassland, or an urban area, or a water body. So that land is not suitable for fodder production, because it is giving other environmental or socio-economic purposes. So we were simulating the yield only in the rain-fed land. So, and the figure in the right shows the case for oats. So in the case of oats also, up to 6 tons per hectare can be produced using small scale irrigation, and more than 48% of the country can produce more than 3 tons per hectare irrigated oats in the rain-fed land. So also the SWOT model can help us to assess the required amount of irrigation to produce the yield, the biomass yield that I was showing you in the earlier slides. So the irrigation amount can range up to 430 millimeter. As you see, the water resources was too much when it was all added, but the irrigation amount was far less. It's about 431 millimeter. And in fact, a large part of the country requires a small amount of irrigation. For example, 15% of the land requires less than 100 millimeter of irrigation to produce the yield that I was showing you early on. So in fact, the irrigation for oats is even less. It is about, the maximum was about 306 millimeter, and about 38% of the irrigated land requires less than 100 millimeter of irrigation. So some of the fodder crops, as you know, are perennial. For example, Napier and alfalfa, they grow throughout the year. So we were also running the model, what would happen if the farmers decided to convert their cereal production into fodder production, and they have a perennial crop in their land, using irrigation during the dry season, and also in periods where there is drought or during dry spells. So in that case, the Napier production can reach up to 34 ton per hectare, and more than 75% of the country, the rain-fed land, were producing more than 15 ton per hectare. So in the case of alfalfa, the irrigation was only maintenance irrigation, because alfalfa may not grow well during the dry season. So we decided to irrigate it to maintain, so that the crop will not die. We were applying a very small amount of irrigation to maintain it, and then it will grow during the rainy season, and we were cultivating only during the rainy season, because that is the nature of the crop. And the yield for alfalfa can reach up to 6.7 ton per hectare, and more than 48% of the country produces more than 3 ton per hectare alfalfa. So these are the potentials in terms of water resources and potential to produce fodder. So as Abiyu was presenting, more than 20% of Ethiopia's land is suitable for fodder production using small-scale irrigation. And as you see, there is a substantial amount of water resources for irrigation, and that can be done in a sustainable way, because as you see, the water resources was far more than the irrigation required. So we can do it in a sustainable way without causing downstream impacts. And as you see, modest amount of fodder can be produced by applying really reasonable amount of irrigation. And as I was alluding, the irrigation water requirement is far below the available blue and green water resources. So in this case, we need to stress that both green and blue water should be used to be more sustainable. If we rely on the blue water, we may overexploit it, or if we rely on the green water, it may not be sufficient. So we need to use both resources in an integrated manner so that we produce fodder in a sustainable way. So thank you very much. I think, Sahai, it is time for question and answer.
Yes. Thank you, Ihun. I was about to cut you. You finished in the right time. So there are a few questions. I can see already Abiyu is replying to some. Let me give you this one. Is it possible to include in the model market access to sell livestock products like milk and meat?
That is a very good question, and our friend Jean-Claude will discuss about it.
Okay.
In the next presentation.
Okay, good. The other one was about, was market considered in suitability mapping of the irrigated fodder option?
Can you repeat it?
Was market considered in the suitability mapping of the irrigated fodder options?
Yes, Avi, you will talk.
The access to market was represented by proximity to roads and also livestock population density, which was actually converted to tropical livestock unit. Yes, it has been considered.
Okay. Is it correct to assess forage based on yield? As we know, Napier has higher yield but low designability. Crop breeds always mark this mistakes. They look at only quantity besides presence or absence of, and I think the question here is it correct to assess forage based on yields?
Yeah, so these biophysical models, they use different data like climate, soil, nutrient. So considering all those, we can simulate. And in fact, the models simulate at a daily time step. So they give us the biomass, and in the case of cereals, they can also give us the yield. So they can estimate the forage.
Okay.
Both biomass, and in cases it requires yield, it can also estimate yield.
Okay, I think just to keep the time, let's move on. Yuhun and Abiyu, please reply to people's question in the chat box. For now, let's move to the next presentation. Participants, still, if you have questions, write it in the chat. They can reply it for you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Let's move to the second one. Jean-Claude, can I invite you now to take us through your presentation?
Yes, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity, and thank you to my colleague who just presented, and hello everyone, wherever you are. So as my colleague presented on the suitability and the availability of water resources to grow irrigated fodder, they basically laid down the groundwork that will allow us to analyze, to narrow down to the field as their work really look at a large scale basin level. So they with our integrated approach, we are now moving to narrowing down to the field to see what is happening with the irrigated fodder. So with that regard, the Apex and FarmSim are being used here. So the exchange between the Apex and FarmSim relates mostly on yield, and as you can see, multiple production sites were established to cultivate fodder crops in these studies. And field data collected was used to set up Apex model to predict fodder yield. So the Apex model was used to evaluate the gaps and constraints of fodder production. And as you can see on the graph on the left, this is at the different stresses that can prevent the production of irrigated fodder. But with optimal condition, then it shows on the right what would happen with if you control those constraints. So here we just simplify by showing this the difference between a baseline scenario, which is like the current practice of producing irrigated fodder, compared to an alternative scenario where the different factors are controlled. Next. So I'll be more talking about the irrigated fodder, its impact on economic and human nutrition. As this arrow shows, our site was in Upper Ghana Kibel. So we narrowed down from the, what was presented to go down to the field sub-basin. So we are considering the Upper Ghana Kibel in Lemo world. As you can see on this map, that region is produce quite enough of fodder. So we are using socioeconomic household survey collected by IFPRI, and our field studies were also conducted with local farmers led by Africa Rising Alien, and as my colleague next will show. Next, please. So to do the income and human nutrition modeling, we are using a farm simulation model called FarmSim. So it's a household farm level model. It's a Monte Carlo farm economic and nutrition simulation model. And it's simulate and focus for 5 years, current and alternative farming technologies or scenario, and incorporate risk just to help with the decision making, to properly inform the decision maker. Incorporate risk from production, especially the yield distribution that are simulated by Apex. Also, it takes into account cost of production cost to simulate economic and nutrition viability of smallholder farmers. It's not an optimization, but it's a simulation of what could be if technology is adopted at different rates. Or, for instance, if we introduce crossbred cows, what would happen? If we feed them with irrigated fodder compared to native cow, what would happen? And the key output variables are basically the profit, the cost-benefit ratio to look at the viability of the enterprise, but also it's looking at the daily nutrition intake per adult equivalent of calories, fat, protein, calcium, iron, and vitamin A. Next. So the scenario we looked at are 4 scenarios, and each scenarios have the exact same of input except the change in technology, and they look at year-round production. So it looks at both the rain season and the dry season productions. The baseline comprised basically the rain-fed crop, and from the information from household surveys. So there were no minimum irrigation, and there were no mention of supplemental fodder feeding to native cows. Alternative 1 looked at rope and washer pumps. So these were part of the LC field studies, and considered native cow. Of course, we looked at rain-fed crops, rope and washer pump using optimally irrigated system as our previous suitability and water resources model showed that there was enough water. And also it considered a supplemental fodder feeding to native cows. The second and the third alternative looked at solar pumps, but alternative 2 considers native cow, while alternative 3 consider crossbred cow. Next, please. So what are some of the input variable and livestock technology that were input into these different alternative, these different scenarios? So very quickly, I just highlighted a few. For instance, for the irrigated fodder, we are seeing an tremendous increase in crop area. For instance, from the baseline to the alternative scenario 3, we have the irrigated fodder expanded. The production of fodder is expanded 7 times, while for the alternative 1 and 2, it is expanded 3 times. Also, you see that the yield is different, goes from 12.6 to about 34 ton per hectare. And also with regard to cows, the house survey shows that the predominant breed of cows in Upper Ghana Kebele is many native cows, as you can see. But we had the luxury of considering under alternative 3 the adoption per each household of a crossbred cow. Although they are in small number, but we looked at that option. If they expand tremendously the production of irrigated fodder, and each household adopt 1 crossbred cow. So you can see the consequences in terms of milk production. But also, let me just jump on the animal source food consumed by farmers. So the baseline is definitely very well informed by the household survey. There's the milk consumed by farmer is 7%, which means the remaining is made into butter. And this is the butter consumed, which means what remains from the consumption is sold. So we kept those proportion, but we kept in mind that if we keep in those proportion in the alternative scenario, then there's an increase in the amount of milk consumed since the production increased under the different alternative scenario. Next, please. So let's look at the key economic impact of adopting livestock technology. I'm not going through all each and every economic indicator, but you can see under the alternative 3 that associate with solar farms and crossbred cow, the total average net profit per year was much higher than the baseline and the other 2 alternative scenarios. Also, we looked at the viability or profitability of the different alternative scenarios, and we see that the numbers indicate that those alternative scenarios are economically viable. Next, please. So, however, to make a proper advice to policymakers, to inform properly the policymakers, it's really hard to do it based on average value. So that's why we, the simulation model allows us to look at what is the real distribution behind those average numbers. And this, once you show the distribution, then you can see the difference, the different key information really that can help when you are really promoting one or the other alternative scenario. So very quickly, you can see that the alternative scenario 1 and 2 that are associated with the native cow, we have a risk for loss, means there's a risk to not to be profitable between 4 and 6%, while the associated alternative 3 associated with crossbred cow, the risk is 0.2%. But I didn't mention that the crossbred cow here that we introduced are possible based on a loan. So this we assumed a loan from a microfinance institution and the loan is paid over the 5 years that the model project. Also, some very interesting information that you can discover with the distribution that 12%, there's a 12% probability that the profit of the baseline is greater than the profit under alternative 1 and 2. And this shows sometimes the risk that, when the farmers are reluctant to invest because they know, if they keep doing what they are doing now, of course, it's not very economically productive, but it presents less risk than when you jump into the investment. Next, please. So let's look at the key human nutrition impact, especially with milk production, as you are looking at the feeding irrigated fodder to the dairy crossbred cow. So we see that under the when you compare the feeding native cow compared to the baseline, we see that the increase in milk consumption due to the increase in production by 0.8 or 80%, while feeding crossbred cow compared to the baseline increases tremendously the amount of milk produced and can increase the consumption of milk at the household by at threefold, meaning like 300%. Increase in calcium as a consequence is due to milk when you keep that that consumption of milk at 70% would be between 73 and 84% under that alternative scenario in general. Next, please. So, well, here we are trying to look into the detail nutrient intake, the energy, calorie, protein, fat, calcium, iron, and vitamin A. What are the changes under the different alternative scenario? Here we looked at far to the right. We looked at basically alternative 2 compared to the baseline. What is the change, the percent change in nutrient? As well as we compare that, what will be the change between the alternative 3 associated with the crossbred cow and baseline. So you can see under alternative scenario 3, there's a tremendous, there's quite a substantial increase in available nutrients. So here I'm talking about one of the indicators of food security, which is the availability of these nutrients at the household. So this is not like what you would do test to look at, how, if you are getting enough protein, but this is what, based on what you are consuming from the production and purchase, what is the adequacy in terms of availability in the 6 nutrients. Next, please.
John, you are over time, 1 minute for this.
Yeah, at the end, so we know that the importance of livestock in Ethiopia and its challenge of low productivity to feed and breed. So crop and livestock scenario under alternative farming system led to the improvement in profit and human nutrition compared to the current practices. Scenario under crossbred cow showed complete alleviation of fat deficit and substantial reduction in available calcium. So our message will be use of improved feed and breed can definitely increase nutrition, but also income at the household level. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. I think there were questions and Nicole was responding. Nicole, is there anything left? I see you are responding to the questions.
I think it would be great if JC would have a look at some of the questions, but I think that there's questions also around the how the analysis was done in terms of home consumption versus what was sold. And I know that that was part of the study. JC, in terms of FarmSim, how did you look at what was sold versus what was consumed? And how did that figure into the analysis of the nutrition for households?
Yeah, thank you. Yes, the model definitely takes into consideration what is consumed and what is sold. And these are information from household survey. So they indicate, from what they produce, they say, okay, we consume this amount and we exchange this amount, as a gift, and we sell this amount. So based on that, we consider that fraction of the production. But there's also what they indicate as well, what they purchase for consumption. So that is added to what they consume from the production to figure out exactly what the total amount consumed. And we compare that to the requirement. The minimum requirement, and figure out what is the deficit.
And JC, did we use the survey data from IFPRI to understand the consumption versus sale?
Yes. Okay, so this may happen in the baseline scenario, but as you saw for the alternative scenario, this is where you can play around in terms of the consumption. If the information is available into the survey, saying that, for instance, for the field studies that were conducted by LC, if they indicate that this is what we saw, after those, field studies, after the production, then we take into account that. But we can also go beyond that. For instance, here we're targeting to see what will be the impact if they consume more milk than selling the milk. So that we say, okay, let's keep that percentage of consumption they indicated in the household and see what what is the impact in terms of increase in some of the nutrients.
Yeah,
Thank you. Go ahead.
I'll just add to that quickly, and I see Tyrell has also raised the issue. There is a difference in obviously the crossbred cattle and their milk production. So some of the split between consumption versus sale of milk depends on what type of cattle they have, and those factors were considered in the analysis. Malcolm may cover that. I don't know, but he would be able to speak to that in his part of the presentation, which is coming up next.
Thank you so much. As you guys are doing already, please respond to the question in the chat. Let's move to the next one. Let me invite Malcolm now to give his presentation on fodder value chain. Thank you. Continue typing your questions in the chat, and then the speaker will respond to that. Over to you, Malcolm.
Thank you, Sahai. Hello, everybody. I thank you for giving me this chance to highlight some of the results of field studies under this irrigated fodder project. As you have seen from the previous presentations, the irrigated fodder project has sites in 2 regions, in the Hamara and the southern regions of Ethiopia. And in these regions where we selected as research sites, farmers had different levels of experience with small-scale irrigation, but that experience was solely for vegetable production and also in some cases cat production. But there were no prior experience of irrigated fodder production. So when we started the project, the first activity was community engagement to create awareness on how these irrigated fodders can produce, improve fodder and improve the livelihood of farmers. Next, please. So when we started the field trials, initially we involved very few farmers who were willing to allocate land for on-farm trials. And based on the local context, we also selected annual oat, veg, forage, and also some of the perennials, napier, decho, and legumes, desmodium, pigeon pea. And farmers were using shallow well as a main source of water. So for the irrigation, water lifting technologies including pulleys, rope, and washer pumps, and later on solar pumps were tested. So the major observation from the demonstration trials was that farmers were able to produce high forage biomass of good nutritional quality from small plots. From this graph, you can see the yield from a multi-cut oat veg forage. We had 3 treatments in this multi-cut oat veg forage trial. The first one was one-time cutting after 85 days of growth, 2-time cutting after 40 days and 85 days of growth, and 3 times cutting 40 days, 85 days, and 120 days of growth. From this, you can see the biomass yield increased with the frequency of cutting, but at the same time, the growing period also increased. For just the growing period is represented by the green, the red line. So farmers, because they want to use their land for both forage production and also at the same time for food production, they preferred to use two-time cutting as a good way of managing their irrigated fodder in relation to oat-veg forage. Next slide, please. The other forage was irrigated Napier. This Napier was subsequently intercropped with PGMP and Desmodium legumes. And this intercropping provided added biomass and forage quality advantage for the farmers. Farmers were also able to collect some amount of PGMP grain from the intercrop fields for human consumption. Next, please. From this table, you can see the yield and the forage quality of Napier produced as a sole irrigated fodder, or Napier intercropped with different varieties, two varieties of PGMP, early maturing and late maturing. The intercropping practice resulted in higher biomass yield and higher crude protein content of the forage, and it increased by about 40% due to the grass legume combination. And the improvement could be due to improvement in the soil physical property and at the same time fertility due to nitrogen fixation from the legumes. Next, please. The irrigated fodder could be harvested 6 to 9 times in 12 months interval in the demonstration plots. And from that, it was possible to harvest from 18 ton per hectare to 23 ton per hectare dry matter annually. And the gross value at a local fodder market was between 150,000 to 200,000 per hectare per year. Next, please. In addition to on-farm demonstrations of the different irrigated fodders, we also had on-farm feeding trials to see the response in terms of milk yield. In this experiment, in this graph, you see two groups of cows which were supplemented with oat-veg hay and the response for that supplementation. So in both cases, in the case of local and crossbred cows, you see an increase in milk production due to supplementation, to the extra amount of oat-veg provided to what actually farmers are providing. So we have, as a baseline, the farmers' practice, and on top of that farmers' practice, the homegrown, on-farm grown oat-veg was provided. And we see an increase in milk yield from 57 to 78%, depending on the type of cows used. And the return actually from that extra milk produced was between 600 to 1,500 birr per 100 meters square oat-veg forage produced. And that amount appears to be quite higher than, for example, what a farmer can get by producing wheat on 100 meters square plot. Next, please. This study is also about the effect of replacing concentrate mixes with oat-veg forage on weight gain of sheep. As we all know, concentrate supplements are not easily accessible in the smallholder systems, and if they are, actually they are expensive and beyond the reach of poor farmers. So we try to see to what extent actually homegrown oat-veg forage can substitute concentrate mixes, commercial concentrate mixes. So the treatments included 100% concentrate, but that concentrate was gradually replaced by oat veg forage. And as you can see from the bar graph, the body weight gain was higher in the case of concentrate. But when you see the net income from the fattening practice, 100% concentrate supplementation and also 100% oat veg appear to be comparable. But if we replace only part of the concentrate, even more income, net income can be obtained. Next, please. Now, during 2019, we had also a nationwide fodder market survey to see the potentials of this irrigated fodder as cash crops. And the graph shows, a range of feedstuffs, the quality and price relationships. The quality here on the x-axis is represented by in vitro organic matter digestibility, and the price on the y-axis in terms of birr per kilogram. So the fodder, the irrigated fodders like Napier and Desho in the middle. So ideally for a livestock producer, he wants to have good quality forage, good quality feed with reasonable price. So when we see the locations of this irrigated fodder, they can actually meet the demands of livestock producers, good quality and also reasonable prices. Next, please. In our survey, we also interviewed livestock producers. To what extent they are aware of the effect of the quality of feed they provide to their animals and their willingness to pay for a better quality feed. And most of the respondents were aware of the quality impacts and were also willing to pay more price for a better quality fodder. So that is a good indication that if irrigated fodder from cultivated forage is produced and presented as a cash crop or sold as a cash crop, it can have good market. And we also try to see on the right side, you see the pie chart. We try to see the amount of money these livestock producers, mostly peri-urban livestock producers, spend in purchasing feeds. And green forage accounts about 10%, and also grass hay about 10%. So in total, 25% of the money the livestock producers spend is spent on forage. Yeah, this indicates that the market could be growing, and fodder as a cash crop is promising. Next slide, please. Next, yeah. So, what are the achievements from this, on-farm trials? The most important one is awareness created, and also the interest now gradually developing in irrigated fodder. Initially, we started with few farmers, around less than 20 farmers all over, but gradually, year after year, the number of farmers who are now working with us and are practicing irrigated fodder increased to 700. So that's a good indication. Even if it's not a scaling project, now we have quite a large number of farmers as research, households to study the adoption, the impact, and also the profitability of this practice. The demand for forage planting materials also increased quite significantly, and we are closely working with our national partners in the north with Andasa Livestock Research Institute. They are really very active and providing farmers with planting materials in addition to the material sources, gene bank sources. Demand also for irrigation technologies is quite increasing now, especially for the newly introduced solar pumps. The demand is growing. Improvement in milk production also was visible. In some cases, dairy cooperatives which were just going down and down revived due to this fodder production. Now, the other important development is irrigated fodder is competing with cash crops. Especially in Bahar Dar Zoria district, farmers are producing khat using irrigation. And one of the qabeles where we are working, Robit Pata, is known for khat production. And surprisingly, one of the areas where we became very successful in promoting irrigated fodder is that area. And some of the farmers even uprooted some part of their khat to produce irrigated fodder. And now it is common to see khat and irrigated napier growing side by side in this qabele. Yeah. So there are challenges also in the process. Most of the beneficiaries are dairy producers, but they have limited access to improved breeds. They demand for improved breeds, crossbreeds, but access is limited. As I mentioned earlier, Andasa Livestock Research Institute, looking at this demand, tried to apply hormone synchronization and artificial insemination to our beneficiary farmers, and now they are getting more crossbred heifers. And in the coming few months or so, they are planning to have bull stations for these farmers. Access to forage planting materials, that's also an issue. And irrigation technologies, the demand is there, but the price is, like, in one side, the price is high, and the access is still limited. Market for milk, that's also an issue. So the ongoing activities now we are doing is like technology packaging, particularly screening different forage genotypes that are efficient for water use and nutrient use. So we are now screening a wide range of yield bank materials on farm to see, to identify varieties that are quite suitable for the smallholder condition. Now we're also trying to strengthen cooperatives in these areas to play active role in providing planting materials, and also increasing access to market for farm produce, mainly for milk. Now we're also doing gender analysis and also the effect of irrigated fodder to climate change resilience. Again, we're also doing cost-benefit analysis and documenting the evidence as a whole, so that it can be scaled in a full package. Capacity building is also an important component. PhD and MSc students are involved in this project. Next, please. So, in conclusion, from the field trials, we have seen that allocating land and water exclusively for forage cultivation is a new development with the potential to improve livestock productivity and also the income of householders, including household nutrition. So irrigated fodder appears to be very profitable for householders, and the government policy and initiatives support scaling of small-scale irrigation. Especially recently, this tax exemptions on farm mechanizations can also apply here for promoting the small-scale irrigation. And there is a need to capitalize on these incentives so that farmers can get these technologies at reasonable prices, and they can improve their livelihoods through this irrigated fodder production and utilization. Thank you. That's all right.
Thank you, Malcolm. There are some questions for you.
Okay.
I could read a couple of the questions quickly.
Okay, go ahead.
Malcolm, there's several, so I'll just select a couple, and then after the webinar, you could reach out to a couple of people for questions we can't respond to now. There are questions around the business aspect. So you've talked about the profitability. You've also talked about the scaling, the farmers who are adopting on their own. So could you talk a little bit more about how we are observing irrigated fodder as a cash crop and a business, how we see that developing in the field? And also there's a question around forage seed access. And I think one of the issues we've discussed is the potential for actually irrigating forage seed. So those are two questions that maybe you could respond to in the time that we have.
Good. So let me start with the first one, fodder as a cash crop. Yes, in the south, fodder markets, green fodder market is quite developed, and it is quite common for farmers to go to the green fodder market and buy fodder at reasonable prices. So in our survey, we found that green fodder is sold around 2 birr per kilogram. That's fresh forage. So in the south, it is becoming very, very important source of income in terms of green fodder, and at some time in terms of planting material. For example, the dash of planting material is an important source of income in the south, and also green fodder, sale of green fodder is an important source of income. There are also different actors involved in this. In our observation, farmers just sell their green fodder on farm, and the middlemen come and harvest the whole fodder on the farm and take it to the market. And in the market, there are also retailers of this green fodder. So you might have seen it from the pictures that I posted in the presentation. So the market is there. And if you drive, for example, from Addis to Walaita in the south, and if it is on the market day, in the morning, farmers bring their cereal grains and other, products to sell to the market. When they return back, they come back with, some amount of fodder just they buy from the market and they bring it to their farms. In the morning, you see many carts, donkey carts, taking green fodder to the market. So that is developing. In the north, it's not as such very well developed in the fodder market, but in the peri-urban areas, there are also farmers who are selling fodder. So, when we see the biomass that can be produced and the amount of money that can be obtained from a fresh fodder, it's, I think, quite feasible to say and sensible to say that it's economically viable. On the seed aspect, as I mentioned it in my presentation, we have seen that demand is growing, but the seed supply system is not developed in the smallholders. So now we are working with the cooperatives, dairy cooperatives, who are located in these research sites. We want to use them as models because the dairy cooperatives' main objective has been just to collect milk and then sell the milk. Instead of focusing only collecting milk and selling milk, if they diversify their role and also they somehow collect forage seeds and sell it to their own members or to other actors who can collect the seed and then sell it to the national system. So with that in mind, we actually provided them some kind of grant so that they can develop their forage system. They will establish their own forage shops. They will have outgrowers of forage seeds. And also the cooperatives also are planning to have their own forage multiplication sites. In that way, we are trying to address the demand for forage seed. But that needs to be linked to more established private sector actors. And if these small dairy cooperatives who can also collect small amount of seed can be linked with bigger private actors. The market link would be more sustainable, and the flow could be quite, I think, promising.
Thank you so much, Malkamu. I think lots of interesting questions and answers happening in the chat box. Please, all the speakers, follow up those questions and follow up with the people who's asking the question. I think at this point, let's move to the next one. Is that okay with you, Nicole? Hello?
Yes, I believe next we'll ask the Honorable Minister for comments from the government of Ethiopia.
Yes. Can we kindly invite you? Are you with us? I don't see him in the list though. Nicole, let me pass to you. I don't think he's with us. Nicole, can you come in and give us your final reflection of today's webinar and also to close the meeting for us?
Okay, he must have had to leave. He was on earlier.
I think I went on the list of the people already online. I didn't see him.
I think that this is a bit of a on-the-spot request, but I was wondering if maybe we could ask the representative from ATA and the Ministry of Agriculture, who's also in the meeting, if he would be willing to provide a couple of comments. Belete, you're on the meeting. Would you be willing to provide a couple of comments? I see the minister has had to leave.
Thank you, Nicole. Okay, the minister was around our meeting. He was participating. In the middle, there was a power interruption. So he lost contact. I myself also rejoined it. I'm checking with him. Oh, connection problem. He texted me. He has a connection problem. Anyways, he's trying to connect with you. He texted me. Anyways, let me give my feedback on this interesting and really vital work you have done, which is, uncommon in Ethiopia, especially relating the livestock sector with irrigation. So the minister he texted me, he's trying to connect it anyways. Meanwhile, it's very evidence-based, it's timely, it's really brand new intervention because we have not developed in our country such innovative program, especially for the livestock sector. I remember 2015, for 2 consecutive years, there is a huge catastrophic drought in Ethiopia, which devastated almost, thousands of livestock on the lowland areas of Ethiopia. I remember when you cross from Addis to eastern Ethiopia, when you cross Jigjiga and around, even in Redawa, the other parts like Borenna, I remember, I think over 30,000 something livestock were lost because of, the feed problem. So because of that, the government has some activity there was a massive activity during that time to mobilize everyone to grow, if possible, to grow this by harvesting any waters, to grow fodder crops like Sudan grass. And there was even, you know, what do you call this, like a ration, like when you a drought happened for people, you ration food crops. But during that time, you know, there was a ration of feed crops from wherever it is there to the drought affected area. Even that was initiated in our country. This it was a time of this Green Climate Fund program time, that after the this Paris Agreement, remember. So there was even 22 waradas in Ethiopia selected to address this problem, hotspot areas which were affected highly. So fortunately, I was part of the Somali, Afar, and Oromia very drought affected areas. So this project is really very interesting, timely research and outputs. I'm 100% sure the minister has attended a small amount of the presentations. Anyways, this is a very interesting project which will be scaled up very soon. So I found it very interesting, evidence-based, with a lot of facts and impacts which you have presented or in all your presentations. I think our research institute also will jump on this, what you started, and will be scaled up very soon, I hope so. Thank you. From my side.
We are at the end of the time. I do want to thank the Honorable Minister for joining us for the time that he was able to. We will also be sharing the recording for parts that people have missed if they did get cut off. I also want to thank our colleagues from USAID, both in DC and in Addis, for joining us, and to colleagues from the Ethiopian Institute of Agricultural Research. Thanks to all our presenters. This research has been years in the making. They present it very smoothly, and it is something that took more than a year. It took a couple of years to actually put all of this together, and even more actually if we go back to field studies. And I want to say special thanks to Sahai for your excellent moderation today, as always. And just a final thanks to all the participants who joined us today. The questions that were not addressed, we will try to respond to by email. We will also have a special issue of our newsletter and be sharing some of the research briefs and the link to the recording. So we will be sharing more information with everyone who was part of the meeting today. So just a final thank you for everyone for joining us today. And the research is ongoing, and we look forward to presenting more of the research as we move forward.